case of the opposition and the debate as a whole. Dear gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen, first I have to thank my dear friend Reid Hoffman, who has made it unnecessary for me to counter any of the points made by the first two speakers on the other side. I do not have to go into life without banks, life without capitalism. We don't have to discuss how government-directed funds into technology without capital markets and banks, how well that would have done for us. We don't have to discuss how clearly Khrushchev would have been right. He'd have buried us if only he'd had state-directed investment in technology. No, we can start with my dear friend Alan Morgan. And we can start by recalling the phrase that many of you know. The great Harvard philosopher George Santayana, 100 years ago, said, "Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it." Ladies and gentlemen, in New Cambridge, tonight, Santayana's ghost is weeping. Fortunately, Ben Bernanke not only read the history, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, he largely wrote it. And for those who want data, I refer you to Bernanke's essays on the Great Depression, and most particularly his fundamental, seminal essay on the non-economic consequences of banking crises. It's available in the Marshall Library, especially when I return the book. There are two reasons for refusing to bail out banks. Two intellectually coherent reasons. The first is that money doesn't matter. Only the real economy, the economy of carbon and technology, the economy that exists and lives without credit, that is the only thing that's real. The alternative view is that bank failures are good for society and they're good for the individual soul. Speaks to the aesthetic. We must punish ourselves. Well, we have two witnesses that I call in virtual space to this debate. The first is Casey Mulligan, professor of economics at the University of Chicago. Now, there's an old line that says, "Would that mine enemy had writ a book." Casey Mulligan wrote an op-ed piece, an article in the New York Times.
Point of clarification. Is this like all the other referenced people, is this person also dead?
No, actually, he's very active. If you want to go on his blog, would you like me to give you his URL? He writes every day, and he digs himself into a deeper and deeper hole. On October 10th, 2008, Casey Mulligan wrote, "The non-financial sectors of our economy will not suffer much from even a prolonged banking crisis." He went on to say, "It turns out," this is 3 weeks after Lehman Brothers, "it turns out that John McCain, who was widely mocked for saying that, quote, the fundamentals of our economy are strong, was right. So," he concluded, "if you are not employed by the financial industry, if you're employed by General Motors or Chrysler, 94% of you are not. Don't worry." Now, that McCain quote, McCain was channeling. We can be almost certain that he wasn't consciously aware of it. He was channeling, consciously aware of most anything. He was channeling one of the most famous quotations in American political history. On October 24th, 1929, Herbert Hoover said, "The fundamental business of the country is on a sound and prosperous basis." He got it wrong. But I referred to Casey Mulligan. Now, some of you, is there anybody here who plays golf? Does anybody play golf? Anybody? Well, then you know what a mulligan is. A mulligan is when your ball has gotten in some impossible position and you decide to get a second chance. Well, Hoover tonight gets a second chance. In his memoirs, he talked about the challenges he faced as the banks failed, and failed, and failed, and failed, and kept failing, and the Federal Reserve did nothing. And he referred to a group of people whom he called the leave it alone liquidationists. It's Hoover's line. Hoover's line from page 30 of volume 3 of his memoirs. He specifically referred to Andrew Mellon, the third richest man in the United States. Only Rockefeller and Carnegie were richer. Mellon was his Secretary of Treasury as he had been for 10 years. And in 1931, Mellon went to Hoover and said, here's the plan, a plan that